My name is Albert Dolan. I'm the Cathaoirleach of Galway County Council and a councillor for the Athenry-Oranmore Municipal District. It gives me immense pleasure to launch here today this film. This was filmed to commemorate 125 years of local government and dedicated service to the people of Galway. Galway County Council has a rich history, and this video intends to give you an insight into some of the stories and experiences that people have had throughout the years. Galway County Council has 125 years of service completed, and it has a lot more to do. Please enjoy this film.
Díomh is Misha Limo Canila, Príomhaimeanach Corla Cunda na Galway. Today we're acknowledging 125-year anniversary in local government, and I would like to acknowledge a lot of the contributions were done prior to the COVID pandemic, and I know that we didn't get a chance to show those pieces, and you'll see some of those clips during today's film. You'll hear a number of different contributions from people who participated and who worked in Galway County Council in providing public services during that 125 years. This personalises a public service that Galway County Council has provided for its citizens in housing, in planning, in roads, and in the old district health boards in the area of health as well. And now I'd like to invite you to listen to the stories of past elected members and staff of Galway County Council who will share their memories and their contributions to public service in Galway, and leave you with the story that Galway is looking towards a bright future, and Galway County Council, as the largest public service organisation in the county, will play a vital and pivotal role in that bright future.
My name is Eileen Ruan, and I'm a Director of Service with Galway County Council. My career in local government started back in 1990. I'm 34 years working in the local government sector as of today. During a career at that length, you make great friends. The staff and the people that I've met along the way, that's what I absolutely have enjoyed the most. For me as well, the staff that have retired and spent their careers in local government, they have worked so hard to shape Galway into the fantastic county that it is today.
My name is Liam Hanrahan. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Planning in Galway County Council. I've been here for the last 5 years in this role, and also in the role of Director of Housing. And I suppose a huge part of our work in Galway County Council is working with the elected members, whether that's local councillors, TDs or senators, and working with them on the issues that they bring forward for their local community. I'd like to introduce you now to the video of our staff and councillors of Galway County Council that we shot in 2019. Unfortunately, it's only getting launched now due to COVID, and we welcome the opportunity to hear the stories and the input of our former staff and council members.
I had done my Leaving Cert in 1958, and in the autumn of that year, an ad appeared in the local paper advertising for clerical officers for South Tip County Council. And I applied, and in those days it was a written exam.
I started off in Thomas McDonough's as apprentice mechanic, and I became a mechanic, and when I served my time, I always had an itching to go to sea. So I joined the Merchant Navy, and was there for quite a number of years, and then eventually came back to Galway, and I got a job in Ford's Garage around the corner from the County Council, and I was there for a number of years, and then that closed down, and I got a job at the County Council, lucky enough.
I was delighted with that because I lived about 600 yards from the County Council offices, and I could walk to work.
Living in a small town and half forced into it, I suppose, and I was a member of Sinn Féin at the time, and they pushed me as well, and between one thing and another, I seen opportunities maybe that you could do something for the village, yeah.
I was a member of Galway County Council for 10 years. During that period, I had a wonderful time. I enjoyed it, made a lot of friends, probably some enemies as well, but we'll leave that aside. But it was a very, very good period in my life.
I always felt that the councillors that we worked with were very reasonable and very committed. And it's better to get on well. If staff and councillors get on well, everything will work out better. And I think that the councillors give a very good service to Galway County Council over the years up to the present time.
I'm a retired civil engineer. I've worked with councils all my life, and most of my time was with Galway County Council. I started off with Wicklow County Council in 1974, 75 moved to Roscommon, 76 moved to Waterford, Urban District Council, and then 1977 came to Galway and worked there until I retired.
I worked for Galway County Council in the machinery yard as a fitter mechanic when I first started.
My name is Tony Murphy, former County Secretary, Galway County Council. I started in Galway County Council in 1979. Prior to that, I had been in Dublin County Council, and my first experience of local authority was with Waterford County Council. I'm originally from Dungarvan, County Waterford, and I did summer work there in 1966, 67, I think. And then at that stage, I had no much interest in local authorities, but I wanted to be a teacher, and I got necessary honours in my leaving cert, but one of the things I was called for interview, one thing I had to do with that, we had to be able to sing. And unfortunately, I wasn't melodic enough for the judges, so they failed me. So I ended up working with Dublin Corporation then.
It was a good environment, but it was completely different, we say, than the present day. A much smaller organisation and a smaller number of staff employed in each section. But it was still a very good place to work. There were good conditions, and you were dealing with something different nearly every day, a multitude of different services. So it was quite enjoyable.
I worked for a politician. I'd worked in Deputy Ulick Burke's office. He was at the TD in East Galway, and I worked in Ulick's office for the best part of 10 years. And it was during that period I was approached to see would I let my name go forward for the council. I had no great ambition to be a councillor, I can assure you, because I had worked doing a lot of constituency work for Ulick or on behalf of Ulick, and it was the last thing on my mind. But I was persuaded by a certain former TD, Pádraig McCormack, and for a lot of the time past, I sort of said, "Oh, Pádraig, how did you get me into this?" But I did. I accepted the invitation to let my name go forward, and I was elected, much to my amazement. But I was elected, and that was the start of my political career.
I had met this lovely lady from Galway at a dance in Dublin in the late 60s, and she dragged me over the Shannon, and I've been there and very happy to be there ever since. And she's still with me after something like 50 years.
Well, I started in Galway County Council in 1968. That was in the old county buildings. It wasn't a great building, it had been an old infirmary, but still it served a purpose.
Coming back into the new building, I was there when our old building was demolished, and we moved out to temporary premises in Lisbon for 18 months, and we came back into a brand new, fabulous building, which even got an award at the time for the architecture of it. It was really, really wonderful.
It was officially opened on the centenary day of 100 years of local government. It was opened officially by the Minister for Local Government at the time, Noel Dempsey.
I suppose I remember Mary Robinson's visit to the council. I suppose that was a memorable time. She was the first woman president, and she was the first president ever to visit the county buildings that I'm aware of anyhow. And we were all on high alert, and we only got a brief glimpse of her as she left the council chamber. We were all hanging over banisters and looking out from corners, but we were all thrilled to see her. It was a real novelty. That was one of the big occasions that I can remember.
Well, I would say one of the most significant changes was in the area of the development of IT.
For instance, the first computer that I saw was big as a room, and now you can fit it in your pocket, and much more information in your pocket than was in the room.
The first computer was introduced during my time there, and I remember we had one computer in the whole section, and it took it nearly half an hour to boot up. It was unreal. And the transition was seamless. I suppose everyone was at the same stage and nobody knew how to use a computer. So we were all at the very same level and we took to it. We didn't see any major problem with it, you know, but it took a while. They were gradually introduced. And I know that the typists, when they were typing, they had to use what you call carbon paper, and every single letter they wrote, you had to have 3 or 4 copies made of it, and you had sheets of carbon in between and everything. They had a terrible time, I say. It was very, very difficult for them.
In the olden days, everything was handwritten. Halfway through, it was all modernised and all was computerised.
And when I started as well, women couldn't wear trousers. So you had to wear a skirt or a dress or something at all times. Trousers weren't allowed. So that was also different, very, very different, because in my time in Dublin, there was no problem like that. But in Galway, that all changed.
I think women in particular, if you got married, you had to give up your permanent job. You might be kept back on as temporary.
And then I think it was 1975 legislation came in that allowed you to stay on for 2 years after getting married. And then you had to leave and you still got your marriage gratuity. I was one of the first who stayed on after getting married and continued throughout my whole career.
There's a lot of the older women never married and they were totally dedicated to their jobs. Well, that wouldn't happen today now, for instance, and rightly so, but that was the way things were.
Another element of what really changed was when I went into local government, it was just after the 1977 election, where domestic rates were abolished. And very shortly after that, the rates on agricultural land were abolished. And that really interfered with local government's capacity to deliver services, because in no time at all, the income base was just completely eroded. And with the erosion of the income base, I suppose, eroded the capacity to deliver the quality services that we had been doing before that and give local authorities discretion in how they used their money.
I suppose the biggest change was losing the health, you know. The other was group water schemes coming in and the parish pump politics for near hit the just, you know, it was very... You'd find it quite difficult to get money for a pump in a village or anything like that, you know.
I think the biggest challenge I faced was when I was an area engineer in Gart, and the first of the flooding that started was in 91. We had minor enough flooding, but in 95 the first wet winter came and we had major flooding of roads. And I think 21 houses got flooded, and it was at Christmas time. So that was probably the biggest, the major problems that arose in my time. And strange enough, when I came to the council first in 1977, I was working on the water services section. What we were worried about then were droughts. And I remember surveying lakes to see where we would get, what lakes would be suitable for water supplies, Lough Outre being one, and there was a proposal to put a dam on that to store water for the dry periods. Lucky enough, there wasn't a dam put on it because it became a major source of flooding in 95 and again in 99.
Well, there was a lot of challenges. I suppose, I mean, the problems that were there then probably still exist today, except, say, they're probably 100 times worse now. Housing was always an issue, a major issue. Planning was a big problem.
One thing we had to do as a housing allocation office was to interview housing applicants. And I remember on one occasion, a couple came in with a small child, and in the middle of the discussion we had about their housing needs, they actually got into an argument amongst themselves. So the child was passed back and forth from one to the other. In the end, when the row reached its crescendo, the baby was left on my desk. So I was literally left holding the baby.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was county manager in Louth during the boom, as I'll call it, and really our struggle was to get work delivered, because the economy was running at overcapacity. And I arrived back in Galway, my timing couldn't have been much worse. And within a year, I suppose the recession had really struck. Within 2 years, we had to start letting staff go. We actually lost a third of our staff in Galway County Council and lost very significant income sources.
At the time, I suppose one of the biggest things was roads and health. But with the advent of the cars, the roads became more important, like as something that needed to be done, and potholes. And most of the roads were sanded at the time, like too, they weren't tarmacked.
There wasn't enough funding for roads, for national roads. And with the establishment of the National Roads Authority, it appears that the government were able to find extra funding, and maybe they were able to establish better priorities, looking at it from a national viewpoint. Now, initially we weren't too happy with it, but I suppose in retrospect, I can see the reason for it.
I was in the finance department of Dublin Corporation, and my salary, by the way, at the time was £9 per week, and we were paid by cheque, but the men out in the sites were paid by cash. So the wages office every week had to fill a pay packet for every member of staff, and they were then delivered to different sites around the city. And I had the perk of going out on Friday to the wages office, getting into a taxi with my box of cash, and going out to housing sites. And you had to be there at the same time every week. So you can see how, from a security point of view, it didn't last that long. But we were actually paid to like 30 shillings extra per week for that. And at that time, 30 shillings extra per week meant a lot to me.
I remember one occasion when there was a deputation, and it wasn't a deputation actually, it was a protest march into the county buildings by Costa, Carta, Sheffield and the Gaeltachta. They were saying that the roads were very bad in the Connemara region, which they were. They had been neglected due to lack of funding. But we would have got word that there was a protest march on the way. So on such occasions, we often locked the doors to try and keep them out. But on this occasion, they marched around the back of the building. They saw a ladder, which they got, came around the front, put it up against the front of the building to a window at the first floor level. One person climbed up the ladder and appeared at the window. It happened to be the office of the assistant county manager. He thought it was an apparition. I think it was around the time of the moving statues. But that person actually got in the window and entered the county buildings. I know the name of that person, but I won't mention it. That was one of many protest marches to the council.
And we had a character who used to come into us during that time. I don't know if people might remember him. He was called Sir James. He was an elderly man, a small little man, who was shell-shocked during the war. And every day he'd come in as someone different. One day he would be a fireman, another day he'd be an ambulance driver, another day he could be someone else, postman who wore a uniform. He always had a different hat. And during the time there was a sugar strike. And he used to come into us with sugar, and he'd insist we don't know where he got the sugar from, but he used to come into us and give us 2 pounds of sugar regularly.
I could see huge changes, like from the early days. If you take an area, the council in the early days would have had, say, the Gort area, we had about 80 workers. So all the road construction, the maintenance and road construction was carried out by the councils with their own direct labour forces. And this, as time went on, the labour force, as they retired, they weren't recruited again.
Well, there was always a challenge in relation to funding. Funding was always an issue. And I suppose often resources, staff resources too, was another challenge.
Another thing that was really advantageous for local government was in the late 90s, local government got constitutional recognition. So there was actually an amendment to the Irish Constitution to recognise the role of local government. That was the first time it was formally recognised in the way it is now in local government.
NRA became responsible for roads and TII now. So that was the road section. If you take the sanitary services section, a lot of construction was done directly as well by the council. So in time, that became, as you know, Irish Water now. And the council had no function in maintaining water supplies, whereas the big thing that time. The person in the office, the local office, they said, I have a leak in Kildare. And they knew what you were talking about straight away.
In the council, I think national government seems to have more power than your locals, but at the end of the day, it's the locals that know what is going on the ground.
I'd say the big change for us all was actually the restructuring of the engineering section. The engineers in the areas, would say there was 11 engineers in Galway County Council, and they were nearly kings in their own area at the time. They had a lot of control, a lot of say, and that has been totally taken away from them, I'd say, you know. They ran everything from you had the roads, water, sanitary, as I mentioned, the parish pump, the graveyards, the dumps. There was a dump in every town, which was a huge nuisance. They cause more headaches than a lot of things because the indiscipline of the people using them.
The EEC imposed vehicle testing, and the vehicle testing meant testing heavy goods vehicles like trucks and vans over a certain weight. So there needed someone to be an authorised officer to go around to the garages to supervise it. And in later years I became foreman, and eventually I wound up being the machinery supervisor and authorised officer for vehicle testing.
I certainly think that councils have lost a lot of functions. If I talk about Irish Water, very significant piece of work that local authorities were responsible for since 1878 and before. A big loss of local service provision there. The National Roads Authority was established, took some responsibilities for roads from local authorities. The Onboard Pleanála got additional powers in relation to large housing developments in recent times, which again has taken it away from local authority. And a lot of the major environmental areas that local authority was involved in licensing are now with the environmental protection area. So there has been an erosion of the range of services that local authorities carry out. But at the same time, the services local authority carry out have been expanded in the area of economic and community development, and I really welcome that.
Well, I suppose really the perception out there is that we're pen pushers in there and that we really don't work hard. But I would have to say that the majority of people, 99% of people, work extremely hard there. People would just think of administration and engineering. They'd forget all about all our outdoor workers, all our firemen, heritage officer, conservation officer, environmental officers, a whole range of people. We even have veterinary officers.
When the millennium came around, I was the millennium officer, which was actually a very enjoyable little job to get, because one of the jobs we had to do was to go around to all the people over 100, and myself and the chairman of the county council at the time was Paddy McHugh, and Paddy and I spent some lovely days driving around the county talking to these people over 100, and they were all lucid and able to tell us stories about their lives, and that it was quite interesting actually.
No, there was great job satisfaction, I think, for anybody that worked in those times. Very busy, but a great job satisfaction, you know.
It was most enjoyable. I did enjoy my time in it. It was very rewarding, I have to say. You feel very satisfied. I have friends that I met 10 years ago, and I still have contact with them. You know, I always say, yeah, they were the good times, they were the good days.
I think one of the best things about working in the council is the friendships you make along the way. And because I've worked in so many local authorities around the country. I have friends and contacts everywhere, and you never quite lose them. And when you get together with a group of local government people, I suppose we've just that shared history, shared understanding. And I actually met my husband in work in the local authorities, so I certainly would recommend it. Love stories begin in the county council.
I suppose the week I left Galway County Council was a lovely week, one of the best weeks of my career really. That I got messages from people I had worked with in Dublin, from staff members of the council, from the members of the council themselves. And I found it a lovely week, the final week of my work. I didn't do much work actually, but some people might say I never did much work. But I ended up in a career that I initially didn't think I would end up being in, and I'm very happy with the life that I had as a local authority official, and it has been good to me, and I hope I made a contribution somewhere along the way.